Hey guys, how's it going? My name is Icy, and today I have a pretty special build for you. This is a spellcaster Void Knight using both Devouring Orb and Smite. Clearing, as you can see, is pretty amazing because Devouring Orb constantly casts Abyssal Orbs, which auto-target enemies around you and on pretty much screen wide, and deal like a decent amount of damage. And if something survives them, well, then Smite pretty much takes care of everything. Smite hits really, really hard in this build. Abyssal Orbs I'm also using to debuff enemies with both slow and chill, and I'm also shredding a bit of their armor. So on top of it being a pretty decent clear speed, it's also a pretty decent utility skill in this build. So without further ado, let's get right into the skill section. Alright, so before we get into it, I'm just gonna let you know that I'm gonna put the boss fights in the top left corner of the screen instead of at the end, because I have a few things to talk about in the skill section and then later on in the gear section as well. And I don't want to make it a too long video because, well, I don't really think those are very interesting. Gonna start out with Smite. This is something you get relatively early on, let's say at like between level 15 and 20. You can definitely start out level it like using this. I don't necessarily think I would recommend it. It's something that you can do, it's something I did, and it didn't feel too bad. But you ideally want to pick up Devouring Orb together with Smite. Like, that's when you want to switch to Smite, is when you already have Devouring Orb. However, if you're, like, stubborn as I am, you can also just level with it. You want to put 1 point in Fissure. This is like probably your first point to actually make it do AoE damage. Otherwise, it just does like single target damage. The fire damage of Fissure later gets converted to Void as well, so don't worry about that. You then want to put 2 points in Sacrifice. You want to put another point into it later, but I'm going to quickly talk about that in a second as well. You're going to put 2 points in Sacrifice, then 1 point in Holy Wave, 3 points in Righteous Fury, and then 5 points in Righteous Flurry. Once you pick this up, it's going to start feeling really good, because that 50% cast speed really, really, really matters. It makes it feel extremely nice, especially because you don't have the penalty from this yet, so this is going to make it feel, like, really good. After that, you want to put 5 points in Atonement, then 2 points in Conviction, and then you want to come back and put the third point in Sacrifice. You can also just put like the third point in Sacrifice right away, but the health cost is then going to be pretty high, and I think that just makes it a bit too awkward for leveling. Sort of up to you what you do with that. For Devouring Orb, you want to put 1 point in Dark Moon and then basically rush Abyssal Emission as soon as possible. You're gonna probably have enough points by the time you're able to pick up Devouring Orb to pick up Abyssal Emission. But just in case, like, this is something that you're gonna rush, like, as soon as possible. You pick up 1 point in Dark Moon, then 1 point in Void Adept, 1 point in Hollow Orb, 1 point in Abyssal Emission, then 9 points in Dark Torrent. You are going to try to get this filled in as soon as possible. After that, you're going to put 2 points in Abyssal Rush for that move speed. I suppose you can also put the 2 points in the Abyssal Rush a bit earlier. I preferred this. I didn't necessarily think I needed to, like, walk any faster. Whichever you go, it doesn't necessarily matter that much. You then want to put 1 point in Cosmic Impact, and this is sort of the experimental, like, section of the build. I previously had 2 points in Abyssal Juggernaut, but I took them out because I don't need the Void Resistance, and I was able to make up for the Ellie Res on my gear. So I took the 2 points out of here, and I took 3 points out of here. I currently have 3 points in Rift Collar and 1 point in Abyssal Expanse. Not quite sure that this is, like, the way to go yet. I'm still going to experiment a bit with these nodes. It probably is, but I don't know. We'll see. If you want to, like, have a bit more cast speed, you can also put them into here. You can also put them into Extinction, or potentially even Distant Satellite if you want to. I don't see a reason why you would, but something you could do. Then Lunge, relatively standard setup. I put 3 points in Tactician, then 3 points in Into the Fray to pick up the double charge, then 1 point in Initiative, and then 5 points in Avenger's Charge to pick up the really, really nice crit chance boost. I then also had a couple points left over, so I put them into Forge On, and 1 point into Unstoppable, and 3 points into Blood Rush. This is sort of where it becomes very customizable. I currently have Volatile Reversal and Sigils of Hope. However, you can mix and match these with Anomaly and Ring of Shields, and potentially even Abyssal Echoes if you want to. I don't necessarily like using Anomaly. I used Ring of Shields quite often on my builds, and Reversal doesn't really feel all that bad if you use it sort of the same way I do. And then Sigils is, there's not really any downside in using Sigils, except for putting 15 points into the Paladin tree. But even those are not really wasted. So, Reversal, the way I use it is I just lunge onto something that I need to kill, relatively fast, because it's not dead from the Abyssal Orbs yet. And then I just use Reversal to get out of it again. Sort of lunge in and then reverse out. It's actually not that bad once you've done it a couple of times. I have 2 points in Time Sap, then 3 points in Catching Up for the move speed, 3 points in Warped Time for the global attack speed and cast speed, then 1 point in Time Lost Vitality, 1 point in Incipient Void Rift, 1 point in Terminal Void Rift, 2 points in Food for Worms, 3 points in Dark Expanse, and 3 points in Harbinger of Dust. I then had a point left over, so I just put it into Traveler's Fatigue, to make the cooldown a bit lower. You can also put it into Dark Expanse if you want to, or potentially even Time Sap, up to you. So Sigils of Hope I'm using because of Sigils of Despair. It converts all of the increased fire damage that you would get from Sigils into void damage. And it works really nicely because it also converts this into void damage. So with this and this combined, you get 35% or 45% increased void damage per sigil, which is really, really, really nice. You have 4 sigils up basically all the time, which provide close to 200% increased damage for basically nothing. You just have it, which is pretty decent. I put 5 points in Empowering Sigils, 1 point in Last Wish, 2 points in Word of Alacrity, 3 points into Decree of Flame, 1 point into Sigils of Despair, then 2 points into Iron Sigils, 5 points into Enduring Hope, and 1 point into Tetragram. Last Wish makes it so that while you're going through monos, you don't really ever need to actually use Sigils of Hope. They just summon on kill, which is pretty nice. It is really you're not going to really need to summon them. 6% doesn't seem like a lot, but given the fact that they have a duration of 25 seconds, it's really not that bad. You can, like I said earlier, also use Anomaly. With Anomaly, you would probably want a Time Bubble, and then, where is it? You could get the increased cast speed from here, probably the Leech as well, though you don't really need Leech. It's sort of up to you whether you pick up Anomaly or not. I would rather not use, that many skills, I suppose. I just want to, press buttons and forget about it. And the way Sigils of Hope works, especially with Volatile Reversal, is you can just stack 4 of them and then press Reversal and get all of your mana back. Which makes it, really, really, really easy to sustain. You're really not going to notice them, I promise you. Devouring Orb you just want to have on autocast. It just autocasts. You have probably at the very least 3 of them up. If you're lucky, all of them echo, and then you will have 6 of them up. If you have 6 of them up, you know, they shoot, like, all 6 of them cast their own Abyssal Orb, which just makes you have a shit ton of Abyssal Orbs around you, which do a lot of damage. So, skill tree, I'm gonna have 20 points into Sentinel, 63 in Void Knight, and 15 in Paladin. In Sentinel, you want 5 points in Juggernaut, 5 points in Relentless, 5 points in Armorclad, and 5 points in Time and Faith. Time and Faith make your Smite not only free, it's already free. The Fissure is sometimes going to cost you 10 mana, but you're gonna get all of that back from Time and Faith. Excuse me. In the Void Knight tree, you want 2 points in Abyssal Endurance, 5 points in Temporal Corruption, 5 points in World Eater, 8 points in Void Bolts, 1 point in Void Corruption, 10 points in Umbral Attunement, 10 points in Future Strike. Future Strikes are really cool because the Abyssal Orbs that hit enemies also trigger trigger Future Strike, and the 50% Void damage is scaled by our increased Void damage. Which means that what this actually should read is a Void attack that hits 2 seconds later and deals close to like 300 damage for me. And when you hit something very, very often, this is really, really nice. You then want 5 points in Echoing Strikes, 10 points in Time Legion, 1 point in Avatar of Regret, and ideally you would like to have this maxed out. Still gonna need a few levels, so that's probably where all of my points are gonna go. I'm also experimenting with Void Flux to see how it feels. This gives you... this makes it so that when you drop below 20%, all of the enemies around you disappear for 4 seconds. In theory, it's pretty decent. I haven't tried it like in like Arena yet, and higher waves of Arena yet. This might either be really good or just really bad. I didn't mention these points because I'm not convinced that this is really worth taking. You might be better off putting them into Sorrow and Steel. I currently have them here just for the sake of having them. I don't know if they're like necessarily the best points to have. They're okay. Into Paladin, we have 15 points. We have 8 points in Defiance, 2 points in Valor, and 5 points into Flesh of Brilliance. You can put the 5 points into Valor as well if you want a bit more health regen. I wanted a bit more health, so I put them in Flesh of Brilliance. By the way, just as a quick side note, because both Smite and Devouring Orb are scaled by attunement, this is actually a pretty nice node for us. Not only does it give us like a pretty decent amount of Ellie res, it also gives us 32% increased damage. So it's pretty decent. It's not the best node out there, but you know, you want Sigils of Hope, so you might as well just pick this up. So for gear, I'm gonna start with idols first. You want 1 1x4 and 4 3x1s. For the 1x4, you want % increased echo damage when a skill echoes. I'm, like, fairly certain that the Abyssal Orb that is, or the Devouring Orb that is cast by an echo then also gets the 56% increased damage, which would then maybe also mean that the Abyssal Orb that Devouring Orb casts also gets the damage. I'm not sure about this yet. Even if that's not the case, this is still really, really nice for Smite, and this is probably going to, with my current setup, make you do like close to 90 to 100k crit on the dummy. The 3x1 idols... Oh, by the way, and as instead of % increased void damage, you might want shred armor on hit. That would probably be better. For the 3x1s, the only thing that matters is the 49% increased damage with Smite. And the reason that that matters is because that's in reality not an increased damage, but more. It's a more multiplier. Meaning this could just as well say 49% more damage with Smite. It really, really, like, makes the difference. If you don't have them, don't worry about that. These do nothing for Abyssal Orb. And even without these, like, you're going to be completely fine. Even if you just have a bunch of these, you're still going to be completely fine. For weapon, we want a staff. I tried using a sorcery staff, whatever, that increased the mana cost. You really don't want that. You want to keep the mana cost low, because if you use a sorcery staff, you're not going to be able to sustain like the cast speed of Smite because of Fissure and everything, and then also the Devouring Orbs are going to cost too much, and it's just going to be annoying, so get an Oracle staff. You want increased cast speed, and either increased percent increased void damage or spell crit chance on there. I went with spell crit chance because I think that makes my crits a bit more that makes me crit a bit more. You can also go with percent increased void damage. I actually have a staff that is identical to this, except it has percent increased void damage. I've been sort of like interchanging the two, and this just feels a tiny bit better sometimes. I also tried experimenting with using a scepter and then an offhand that gives crit. You really want the adaptive spell damage. Like, you really want as high adaptive spell damage as possible for your Abyssal Orbs and your Smite. With an offhand or with a Catalyst and a Scepter, your crit might be a bit more consistent, but if you don't crit, it's like hitting something with like Overcooked Ramen, and it's really not gonna feel that nice. So you really want the adaptive spell damage. Other than that, you want chance to chill on hit and chance to slow on hit on here. You probably could go a bit higher with those, and that would make them a bit, well, easier to like apply. I don't necessarily think it's necessary. You're perfectly fine with even just T1 mods of like both, but whatever. If you can get higher, get higher. For your helmet and chest, you want to use the Shadow Helmet and Shadow Plate for the percent increased void damage. For my helmet, I have set Fizz and Void, set Necro and Poison, increased void damage, and spell void damage. You really, truly don't need that. I'm using it because I happen to have this helmet. If you don't, just put more health or more dodge on there. It's perfectly fine. For my amulet, I'm using a brass amulet. For the longest time, I was using Locket of the Forgotten Knight. The 3% increased void crit chance definitely makes you like do more crits. However, on my amulet, I have void penetration and chance to shred armor on hit, and the void penetration just straight up read that as more void damage. So that's just 8% more void damage. It has increased spell crit chance as well. You probably can also use crit multi here, or just increased void damage again if you want. Whichever you have, use that. The chance to shred armor on hit is really nice because, once again, we hit very, very, very often. So that shreds, like, that applies the 20 stacks of shred relatively quick. For my body armor, I went with Vitality, Dodge, Health, and Ellie Res. Ellie Res because I needed a bit of help capping my res, and even now I'm like just barely undercapped. If this would be 1 tier higher, or probably even just better, just 1 tier higher, it would be like perfectly fine. Instead of Vitality, what you can also do is go with Attunement for a bit of like increased damage. I didn't see that to be necessary. I instead would have preferred a bit higher life pool. Hence, you know, Vitality. Dodge rating is really nice as well, because we have the mod dodge rating for 4 seconds on potion use. It makes my dodge go from 220 to 970. So, yeah, it's pretty nice. Other than that, we have set Necrotic and Poison, Dodge, and Health, Hybrid Health on my belt. On my rings, on one of them, I have set Ellie Res, set Fizz and Void Res, Health, and Dodge. And on the other one, I have increased spell damage, Necrotic, Poison set, Health, and then Dodge. I went with silver rings because, well, movement speed. Want to be able to move around as fast as possible. If you have better gear than I do, you can probably afford to drop one of the sets here and have percent increased void damage either on this ring, or I don't know, spell damage and void damage on this ring as well. It's pretty much up to you. I don't think I'm going to be needing more damage at this point. But again, that's just recommendations, I suppose, or options, I suppose. For gloves, I went with cast speed, Ellie res, set Ellie res, health, and hybrid health. Cast speed is like really important to make the build feel nice. For my boots, I went with set heli res, set phase res, increase movement speed, and hybrid health. For my relic, just basically ignore this item. This is very bad. You want, well, set necrotic and poison, crit multi, health, and I happen to need a bit of phys res, so I have phys res on here. That's been pretty much it. If you have any questions regarding the build, well, write them down below in the comment section. Or you can also come and check the build live on twitch.tv/icyret. I'm probably going to be streaming the build for at least another few days because I'm having a lot of fun. I'm really, really, truly enjoying the build. I'm now going to just at the very end put, I suppose, a minute clip or so of the highest wave arena that I achieved. I got to 175 and then died because of something stupid. I'm fairly certain that this build can easily go above 200. I'm just not really a good enough player to, like, do that. You probably, at that point, want to dodge a few things, like, manually dodge a few things that I just don't have the skills for. I don't have the reflexes for. So, yeah. That's been pretty much it, like I said. If you have any questions, write them down in the comment section. Otherwise, like, you know, the standard like, comment, subscribe, question mark. Thank you guys so much for watching. Have a good one, and I'll see you guys next time.
I'm gonna take